take. Breaking news this morning, details of the Penn State investigation into the Jerry Sandusky child sex abuse case is now being made public. And the report basically finds failure by Joe Paterno and others in the scandal. The report says Joe Paterno and others show, quote, callous and shocking disregard for child victims. Evidence shows Paterno, ex-President Graham Spanier, Athletic Director Tim Curley, and former Senior VP Gary Schultz knew of the 1998 investigation. In 1998, Paterno failed to take any action. Penn State concealed critical facts in order to avoid the consequences of bad publicity. Penn State changed its plan to alert authorities after consulting with Paterno. Penn State failed to adhere to federal law requiring collecting and reporting crimes such as Sandusky. Those are the bullet points of the report. Stephen A., your reaction.
Well, first of all, my heart goes out to obviously the victims, first of all, and obviously most importantly, but also to the Paterno family for having to deal with this. I am sensitive to, and I do understand their desire to protect Joe Paterno as much as they possibly can. I truly do. As a family member, you get that. But it can't happen. Not in this particular case. And I applaud the investigators for coming up with the material that they came up with to look into this matter and the report that the ex-FBI director has released to us. The fact of the matter is this case, as it pertains to Joe Paterno, has never been about his guilt, Skip, as it pertains to the heinous, disgusting, and despicable actions of Jerry Sandusky. We know that Joe Paterno didn't do that. And a lot of times when people have been, coming out in support of him, sticking out their chest, trying to say that he didn't have anything to do with this and trying to taint him as a victim, it has been some of the most egregious things that I have ever seen in all my years of covering sports. Because what's not being captured enough by these supporters of him, Skip, is how basically you're doing it at the expense of those who were molested as children.
Yeah.
This is not some pay-for-play scheme. This is not some money being thrown under the table or whatever. This is child molestation. You had an eyewitness on Joe Paterno's staff who informed him that he saw Jerry Sandusky sodomizing a child. You didn't do anything. A matter of fact, when it was brought to your attention, according to the reports, some of the bullet points up in here, they said Penn State changed its plan to alert the authorities after consulting with Joe Paterno. This individual, who is the head coach of Penn State's football program, the iconic face of Penn State, literally told the president to get out of his house years ago when the president came to him to fire him. So you can throw the president out of your house, okay, to save your own job and to keep your job and your stature within the community, but you couldn't deal with this situation when you had a former member of your staff molesting children, using Penn State facilities to do it. Basically, I'm going to go as far as to say potentially using his connection with the football program to ingratiate himself with kids that he ultimately molested. And you have people sticking out their chest saying that Joe Paterno is a victim. In what world? In what world? I'm so sorry that his family has to deal with this. I don't wish that on any family member. But children supersede Joe Paterno's reputation here. And as far as I'm concerned, it took a major hit. And even in his passing, we have to acknowledge that.
That was very well said. Bottom line to this investigation, Joe Paterno was first and foremost responsible for allowing Sandusky's evil to continue post-1998. And I'm with what you said about his family, Stephen A., but if there's any silver lining to Joe no longer being with us, it's that he doesn't have to live with the shame brought forth into the public light today about another classic example of absolute power corrupts absolutely, and that's what happened to Joe Paterno. He spent a long and mostly great career building and defending the image of Penn State football as a great powerhouse program built on great student athletes. And Stephen A., in the end, he defended it to its near death because it went completely over the edge into denial. Because, again, just to reiterate for those who haven't kept up with this, in 1998, 14 years ago, victim number 5 testified to a grand jury that he was molested in the shower by a Sandusky who lathered him up and bear hugged him. And a university investigation followed, and a university detective went to Sandusky and he said, yeah, I did it. I was wrong. And the university detective said, just don't do it again. Really? That's as far as it went? Just don't do it again? So Sandusky walked into the sunset. He retires in '99. And that year, the American Football Coaches Association, with Paterno's blessing, makes him the assistant coach of the year in America. Are you kidding me? And then in 2000, out comes Sandusky's biography with the horrifyingly ironic title, Touched. The Jerry Sandusky story? Are you kidding me, Stephen A.? It was allowed to go that far by far the most powerful man at Penn State, Joe Paterno, all in the name of defending that program in its image. And in one last desperate act that was just reported yesterday, leaked, I assume, by the family, Joe himself wrote a letter that was to be passed out to a lot of the ex-players, defending the program, saying this wasn't a football scandal. It had nothing to do with our program, which remains great. We are Penn State. But it was Joe. It was Joe's responsibility and his fault that the program will now live in infamy and shame.
You know what, and Skip, I could not have said it better. Those words were incredibly eloquent, and I really appreciate you saying that. The one thing that I'd like to add to what both you and I said is that just the other day, they announced that Penn State had received over $208 million, okay, in donations, etc. Well, what does that say? All right, fine. Everybody wants to put that out there. That's news. But what it's really saying is that Penn State, we're bigger than this, okay? This does not define us. Oh, yes, it does. Oh, yes, it most certainly does. I'm sorry. Because when you are a university, I mean, remember, this goes through the business department up to the president of the school. Everybody's got their hands dirty up in here, okay? Why? Because you allowed a sexual predator to sit around, use your facilities to terrorize children, and you did virtually nothing. That is the shame that is associated with Penn State, and I, for one, I'm not talking about the students who know how egregious this is. I understand that you don't want to paint everybody with a broad brush, and you don't want everybody to suffer. But I'm just talking about the institution itself. I personally wish that somehow, some way, they suffer just a little bit more. Because I guarantee you, no matter how much suffering they go through, it will be nothing compared to what they allowed children to suffer at the hands of somebody that they knew and honored and supported and applauded while all of this stuff was going on. They should be ashamed of themselves.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you very much for those words.